Good evening, everyone. My name is Sheila Morris. I'm Associate Director of UCD Alumni Relations and organiser of the UCD Festival at Home 2021. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you to this evening's conversation, the 25th UCD in Conversation webinar. It'll be a little different to the usual event format as we launch the second virtual edition of the UCD Festival at Home, and take you through some of the programme highlights that are going to feature over the festival weekend from the 27th to the 29th of May. So, with just 2 weeks to go to the unique and award-winning UCD Festival, we're thrilled to have broadcaster, writer and UCD Festival literary curator Rick O'Shea with us, along with 3 festival collaborators. Dr. Ellen Rowley, Assistant Professor at UCD School of Architecture, Planning and Environmental Policy. Phil Smyth, a UCD Discovery, Outreach and Impact Scientist and Science Communicator. And Dr. Julie Morrissy, UCD Newman Fellow, poet, academic, critic and activist. As with the In Conversation series, the UCD Festival will also reflect UCD's strategy 2020 to 2024, Rising to the Future, which identifies 4 strategic thematic pillars: creating a sustainable global society, transforming through digital technology, building a healthy world, and empowering humanity. This evening's format will be a 30-minute conversation followed by a short Q&A. We'll aim to wrap up around 7:45. So feel free to submit questions using the Q&A function at the bottom of your screens. Rick will do his best to get to them at the end of the conversation. Should you miss any of tonight's webinar, don't worry, we are recording it and it'll be available on the UCD Alumni YouTube channel afterwards. So, without further ado, it gives me great pleasure to hand over to Rick, our moderator for this evening.
Thank you for the lovely introduction, Sheila. I'm at least 2 of those things willingly, so thank you very much. Good evening. Welcome to this, which is the launch of the programme for the second virtual edition of the UCD Festival at Home. The 2021 edition this year. This is our 2nd year that we've had to run everything online, but we have an incredible series of events. There's almost 90 of them being delivered by the UCD community of student societies, schools and colleges. There are research centres, units, global chapters and strategic partners all involved as well. In tonight's UCD in Conversation event, our 3 panellists are going to highlight their favourites from the festival and also some other standout highlights that they might encourage you to attend over the course of the 3 days. We have leading alumni involved this year: Neil Jordan, Shelley McNamara, Frank MacDonald, Madeleine Keane, Kevin O'Sullivan, Lydia O'Leary, Derek Tynan, Jessica Traynor, and a number of UCD's world-class academics featuring across the events, including Lucy Collins, Diarmuid Ferreter, Emily Pine, Dr. Alan Mee, Dr. Ellen Rowley, Paul Perry, Niamh Campbell, Jory Lagaway, stop me when this gets too long for you, Dr. Cara Augustenberg, Professor Niamh Moore-Cherry, Owen McAvoy, and Feng Cha Chiu. Now, my name is Rick O'Shea. I'm the presenter of the book show on RTE Radio 1. And for the 2nd year, as Sheila said, I am the curator of the literary strand of the UCD Festival this year. I'll tell you more about my events in a few minutes' time. First, a little on our panellists tonight. Dr. Ellen Rowley is an architectural and cultural historian. She's a leading scholar of 20th century Irish architectural history, publishing extensively. Her research on housing and Irish architectural modernism has been experienced by thousands of people in Ireland through her work as the curator of Dublin's Tenement Museum in 14 Henrietta Street, as it developed from 2016 to 2018, of the Dublin Art and Architecture Book Fair 2018, and of Belfield 50 from 2019. Phil Smyth is an award-winning scientist. He has over 14 years experience in designing, developing and delivering public engagement programs all over Ireland, but it's far more likely that you will know him if you have young kids as Phil of Science on RTE's Homeschool Hub. And Julie Morrissy is a poet, lecturer and literary critic. She is the inaugural John Pollard Newman Fellow in Creativity at University College Dublin. We'll be talking to them in a few minutes. Briefly, I want to start by giving you the rundown of the 5 events that I've curated for this year's festival. I'm hoping there's something in it for everybody, and I'm excited by all of them. The first event We'll have UCD academic and author of Notes to Self, Professor Emily Pine, talking to Sophie White about her recently widely acclaimed collection, Corpsing. It deals with everything from the horrors of grief to addiction to mental illness and the casual and sometimes hilarious cruelty of life. It is hilarious in places. And also Emma Dabbery on a new way to talk about racial injustice, one that builds on the revolutionary ideas of the past and forges new connections. That's all from her brand new book, What White People Can Do Next. That's event number one. For the second event, UCD's writer-in-residence, Niamh Campbell, herself a recent debutante with This Happy, is going to be talking to 3 Irish writers, all with debut novels or debut short story collections this year. That's Louise Nealon, whose Snowflake is out this week, Louise Kennedy and John Patrick McHugh, who both have short story collections out. Niamh is going to be talking to them about their work, about the craft of writing, about being part of the Irish writing zeitgeist in 2021 as well. The third event is one that's very close to my own heart. Author Paul McVeigh is the editor of The 32. It's an upcoming collection of essays and memoir bringing together 16 well-known writers from working class backgrounds with an equal number of new and emerging writers from all over the island of Ireland. And it also includes Fritz Sinn's a piece written by me as well. He is going to be in conversation with 2 of the featured authors. That's Lisa McInerney, whose book is also out this week, her most recent novel, and Michael Nolan. For my next event, Dr. Cara Augustenborg, who is the Environmental Policy Fellow at University College Dublin, will be talking to Dr. Paul Behrens. Paul is an academic in environmental change at Leiden University, and they'll be talking about his recent popular science book, The Best of Times, The Worst of Times, Futures from the Frontiers of Climate Science, all about our reasons to be optimistic and our reasons to be pessimistic about the future of the climate emergency. We also have a poetry event this year. My colleague and presenter of RTE Radio 1's The Poetry Programme, Olivia O'Leary, will be in conversation with Jessica Traynor, Peter Sir, and UCD professor Lucy Collins, asking how much did Yeats and the Celtic Revival dominate poetry in the early years of the Free State? How long did it take for Irish poets to find a distinctive contemporary Irish voice and open up maybe to international trends? And what was the effect of censorship and the Catholic Church, as well as where were all of the women poets? A couple of other events I want to flag with you as well. The Novel in the Digital Age is going to be an event with Paul Perry from UCD himself, with a novel out this year, and Madeleine Keane of the Sunday Independent. And what does it mean to be young, Black and Irish? It's a discussion exploring real lived experiences about life in Ireland from people of young, Black and Irish communities. Hosting this event, it's going to be moderated by Nana Newby, who's an alumna, lecturer and author, and featuring Jay Ilaloel, an alumnus and musician, Aghogo Okpara, a final year undergraduate student, writer and blogger, and Bashir Otukoya, who is a PhD candidate and academic. Those are some of the ones that you should look forward to, and some of the ones I've had my hand in this year at the UCD Festival, but there's a lot more happening in a lot of different areas as well. And maybe Ellen, this is where I'll call on you now. Ellen Rowley, what would you like to tell us about that's coming up in the festival this year?
Okay, thanks Rick. That's all of that sounds fascinating. I wanted to highlight some conversations coming from our school. First off, the School of Architecture, Planning and Environmental Policy. And it's a mixture of student work and hearing from important alumni, specifically on the subject of Dublin's Temple Bar. So it's 30 years since Temple Bar was reimagined as a European cultural quarter. And we're having a panel, Temple Bar by Group 91, 30 years later. Primarily because what people mightn't know is that Group 91, the design consortium who reimagined Temple Bar in 1991, were primarily made up of young architects who were UCD tutors in the School of Architecture and alumni. And so for this panel, we're having 3 highly esteemed UCD alumni: Shelley McNamara of Grafton Architects, recipient of the Ulysses Medal, Frank MacDonald, former environment correspondent from the Irish Times, and Derek Tynan, award-winning architect. Derek Tynan Architects does a lot of housing, and they're going to discuss their relationship with Temple Bar. And our chair, Alan Mee, promises to probe the panelists so as to uncover the fascinating story behind the making of Temple Bar. There's lots of intrigue. Charlie Hy's in the middle of it, and this it's kind of, we're going to look at the original Temple Bar vision, but also, I suppose, because 2 of the panelists were Shelley and Derek, were part of the original team, And then Frank, the third panelist, is a long-time resident of Temple Bar and would be one of Dublin's most lively and astute urban commentators, and has plenty to say. And because, you know, I suppose the premise of this is that Temple Bar is a challenging place in 2021. And we want to think about the original intentions and the legacy. The second Temple Bar event is a showcase with a short introduction by me of some of the students' work. And we're mostly pointing to an exhibition that we are making to launch in a few weeks in the windows of former Film Base on Curved Street. So to mark the 30 years since Temple Bar was reimagined, Dublin City Council Heritage Office commissioned us in the Master's programme to make an exhibition. And so two of our students, Cara Jordan from Architecture and Roisin Cal from Urban Planning and Design Masters, are going to bring us on a virtual walkthrough and showcase some of their research. So it's a really nice moment that we can share with that, share students' work. And then kind of outside of the architecture world, but still thinking of history, less so living history, I thought the conversation about the 1996 biopic film Michael Collins would be worth tuning into. And, you know, it's probably more interesting today, given that we're facing the centenary of the Civil War. So 25 years on, this conversation is looking at the historical importance of that film, and I suppose touching on maybe, you know, filmic interpretation, historical inaccuracy, perhaps. So I'd be very interested in that with director Neil Jordan, historian Professor Dermot Ferreter, and Jory Lagerway, the head of film studies in the School of English Drama and Film and Creative Writing. Another conversation that I'm interested in terms of climate change and that pillar of creating a sustainable global society is a panel being led by Kevin O'Sullivan on climate change and the impacts and policy and activism. And so Kevin is Environment and Science Editor and a UCD alumnus, and the panel will be looking at government policy and green energy production and mass movement of people. And I suppose that last named issue of mass movement of people is obviously of critical interest today in these COVID days of 2021. Another very COVID poignant related event, and we're feeling it across the board, is the issue of burnout. So I can speak from the perspective of academic staff and mother of school children, but certainly burnout is something very real as we spend all these hours on Zoom. So I'll be tuning into In the Doctor's Chair with Dr. Mark Rowe, medical doctor, life strategist and vitality expert, I'm told. I need a bit of that. And he'll be talking to Leo Cullen, head coach of Leinster Rugby. Not something I know much about, but they're talking, or I'm not very interested in, but I'm interested in the theme of burnout prevention and building a resilient mind. And then finally, Rick, if you can bear with me, because I'm biased, I'd like to call out one more architecture event, and because it encapsulates these pillars of empowering humanity and creating a sustainable global society. And it's the webinar, student-led, final year Masters in Architecture students discussing and showing their design research theses on new ideas for living in Ireland. And this exhibition is called This Is Where We Are Now. And it's part of a national and international exhibition, which is going to be posted around Ireland and in the UK, Spain and India, reflecting to the dispersed nature of their own working conditions during this learn from home pandemic. So just to say that those architecture events, the three of them are grouped together, and they will be aired from 3 p.m. All afternoon and into the evening on Friday, the 28th of May. So that's my highlights. Thanks, Rick.
Those are fantastic highlights, and they're really broad, and I'm all for the burnout event as well. I absolutely want to know how we can get greater resilience. It's, again, said he sitting in front of his screen on Zoom, conducting an event on Zoom. If you have any questions that you'd like to put to any of our panelists tonight, you can drop them in the Q&A section here as well. Please do so. I'm going to move along, though, to Phil Smyth with quite a lot of the stuff from our science section, because it's always jam-packed every year. Phil, firstly, how's your nose?
Thanks. It's fine. Yeah, for those who don't know, I dropped something. Well, I tried to catch a pot with my face, and it didn't go too well. So the stitches are they're kind of healing. There's a lot of makeup, which I must thank my wife for helping me with. But yes,
I was worried about you. I was just concerned. That's all. It seemed serious.
Yeah, mostly people are worried about me for different reasons as opposed to the ones that we have tonight. I'm just a little bit disappointed myself. I still haven't gotten the compulsory Zoom bookcase in the background. I mean, all of you are doing it and you're nailing it in that sense. I feel like I'm letting the side down with my goddaughter's art, but she wants it. The more I put it there, the higher the value goes and the more she wants it back. So I think I'm doing her a favor. You're completely right about the science, innovation and discovery. Like there's always a wide kind of breadth of things happening at the festival, and you can see that with what Ellen was saying, what Julie will talk about. The same is true in science. And before I kind of get to the specifics, I suppose that sometimes that the fact that these things are in pillars of science doesn't mean that if you're not necessarily into science or you think that science isn't your thing, that these won't interest you. They're entertaining, they're interesting, but they're about life a lot of the time, and all of us are interested in life in some kind of way, and what aspect or part of that it is. So we have a whole host of different things coming up for lots of different ages as well. I'm involved in a couple of ones. The first one and of course I'm going to get my own plug in first, rather selfishly, is we have a family quiz to start off, which was called Pick Your Brain. It's a game that you'll play. It'll be live. There'll be Lego prizes, so there's interactivity in it. And kind of that's a lot of what these events should be. There might be interactivity in a lot of these events, but also could be the spark to set you on a course of exploring what else is happening in UCD. It is really for all ages, even for very small kids. Scientific Sue will be here with talking about potions and explosions, and I don't care if you're 9 to 99, that's going to interest, I think, in some ways. Potions and explosions are always there. The one really thing that, again, like I say, but from the age, it's also languages or different backgrounds or what else you're in. Like there's Sport agus Spree, Le Gaeltacht UCD, which is kind of like STEM activities as Gaeilge. So we're looking to kind of include as many kind of different avenues and as opportunities for people to get involved with the UCD alumnus. There's also weird and wonderful stuff coming up, which is always a treat for the soul. Like we're showing Phil Kennedy's film Father of Cyborgs, which is kind of examines the ethical quandaries of like self-experimentation, the future where technology is going, where human brains kind of mix in. So it might even be just something to start to experience, but also to set your mind thinking. And they're all underneath the kind of science sphere. And we have another one, Little Big Questions, where Shikemi, a chemistry student, Avian, and I look at like answering little questions and taking ones that kids have asked and going on like little exploration. We also have something that I'm incredibly nerdily and I suppose geekily excited about. We're really lucky to have an amazing partnership with Intel Ireland, and through Bernie Caparo and Eamon Sinnott, who's the CEO there. They've partnered with us to create and make a laser harp, which is a new musical instrument where the strings are made of laser beams. It's beautiful wood that's been, from a tree that was originally owned by the Duke of Wellington. It's sensory, it's accessible. It doesn't matter what age the kids or anybody interacting in terms of intellectual or physical ability, but we're going to have a performance with that. Eamon's going to talk a little bit about that. We've got stuff from iCrag, iForm, and Insight, the SFI Centre for Data Analytics, which will actually give people a chance who are outside of art science, but to see what your tax dollars are being invested in terms of research and what's coming down the line. Some really exciting and interesting things. Like there's one about COVID related. I know Ellen was talking about the projects that are related to COVID there, about how breathing across your phone speaker will tell you how your lung capacity is doing, and how actual young researchers and like even PhD students, like people who are only starting out on there, it's not just about like professors and coming out and going, here, look at what we're doing. It's people starting their journey. And maybe, you know, kids or transition year watching this will kind of go, oh, I could do that, or I'd love to get involved in it. It's what the festival is all about. It's about showcasing what UCD is, what's happening, the people who are there, and some of the even stuff around, particularly in the sphere of sustainability, like BioOrbic, when another SFI centre are looking about life of plastics, food, and the circular economy. The School of Electrical and Mechanical Engineering are looking at light and how we can play around it. There's Coder Dojo, even the School of Archaeology and School of Geology are getting, but it's a showcase. So whatever you're interested in, come along and see. Even if you're like, oh, I have 5 minutes, you could watch Coronation Street, or you could watch something that's on the festival and grow a little. So I'd suggest that, you know, dip your toe in the water and see what's there. Ellen, Julie, and I are going to kind of hopefully inspire a little bit of, you know, toe dippage is what we're trying to get towards.
Phil, you had me at laser harp.
Yeah, I'm so giddy about that. Like, it's like, oh, it's glory. Even it makes me sound like as if I can be musical.
Like, I don't want to ask you if you don't really know any more. How do you play it? Is it really thick gloves? Is there a, how does that?
Yeah, no, it's not like you play it once, like you put your hands in your fingers are gone. They're very low powered lasers. But when your hand breaks the beam, you see it and you see the light on it, but it also sends a signal in play. So, but you can put any kind of notes on it. So you could have an electrical guitar, but it's kids of like from 2 to any age can play it. So we're gonna have a performance. We're gonna put a smoke machine so you can see the lasers. Possibly a disco ball if I can find one. Yeah, it should be good. Yeah,
that sounds genuinely amazing, Phil. Thank you for that section and for everything that's going on. Finally, we turn to Julie Morrissy. Julie, there's an awful lot going that you want to flag with us happening in the festival this year as well.
Yeah, thanks, Rick. That all sounds so great. I'm really excited about lots of things that were mentioned there. I'm going to talk about the performance strand, which is really exciting for me this year because I've often been involved in the literature and poetry events, but this year I have a film debuting in the performance part of the festival. And it's a poetry film, a performance film. It's 26 minutes long. I've made it with the filmmaker Alicia Doody. We filmed part of it in UCD, around the Newman building, at the lake, on the concourse. And it's from my project, Certain Individual Women, which looks at gender inequality and the lives of Irish women. So there's a lot going on in the film, and it's going to be, its first public debut will be over the weekend of the festival. It'll be screening for the whole weekend. So I'm very excited for people to check that out. But there's lots of events in the performance features that I'm really looking forward to. Beginning with the Generation X event, which is hosted by Molly and the Keogh Naughton Centre for Irish Studies at Notre Dame University. And this event is it's a group of artists and writers who kind of came of age in Ireland during significant time periods like the Troubles, the peace process, maybe parts of the Celtic Tiger, EU membership. And so their work has been really influenced by a lot of big social and cultural encounters. And these conversations are going to be happening with Professor Barry McCrae, and the artists involved are the writer Belinda McKeown, who's wonderful. I met her out in New York a couple of years ago for Poetry Fest. The brilliant Katrina Lally, and also the musician Ian Lynch from the very popular band Lankum. So I know there's going to be a lot of interest in that event. I'm also really excited about the Bridget's Day event, which is 3 poems for Bridget. I was involved in some of the celebrations for Bridget's Day earlier on in this year. So I was part of the Ireland-Scotland celebrations with the poet Iona Lee. So this is really exciting to see the 3 poets that are taking up the Bridget mantle for the festival. As many people will know, Bridget is the kind of the figure for poetry and healing and craft work. So perfect for the UCD Festival. And there's poems commissioned by 3 of my favorite poets. We've got Doireann Ní Ghríofa, Paula Meehan, and Needy Zach Iria Ipe. So that's, I mean, they're going to be brilliant. And those works are kind of in tandem with performance artists or spoken word artists, which makes it really exciting. And those artists include Osara Azams, who's wonderful, Ruth McCabe and Katrina Ennis, and there's also a musical kind of component to that event too. So I think that's going to be really great. And there's just a couple more that I'll briefly mention. Molly has another event that is called Past, Present, Pride. And this is kind of revolving around the work of LGBTI plus community and writers who are going to contribute to that, include Emma Donoghue and Colin Tobin and Mary Dorsey. So I think that will be a really lively event too. And the last one I'm going to mention is, I believe there's a UCD community choir event. I've been talking to some of the people involved. I think they're doing a rendition of ABBA's Super Trooper. They recorded these parts on Zoom during the, rehearsed on Zoom, recorded their parts on Zoom. And it's all being put together. I've heard that there are costumes, and I think this is probably the energy that we all need right now. So I think that's a really fun one that everyone can enjoy.
There's a question, maybe Julie, it's for you, or maybe it's for any of our other panelists as well. You're right, this is a kind of unique time for us to be doing the festival online, in that last year the festival was online as well, but it was at the very beginning of the very first wave of COVID. This time around we're at a point where, you know, there is light at the end of the tunnel, and hopefully it's not an oncoming train, and everything seems to be feeling more optimistic and more. So do you think there's an element of that in our programming this year? I don't know if anybody wants to take that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think that I think people are in a different mindset this time than they would have been last year. As you were saying, I think we were really kind of heading into the abyss last year. We didn't really know what we were facing, and we're all so much better at Zoom now. Look at us, we're doing a great job. So I think that there's, you know, I think people as well, people are used to it now. We're used to doing the events, we're used to watching the events on Zoom, and like we know that they can be really quality productions. So I think that's going to make a big difference this year too. There's less of the unknown, I think.
There's also an element, and I was just thinking about looking through all of the events in all of these strands, that there is a huge amount of creativity going on, whether it's through any of the three strands that you were all talking about, that has to happen as a result of us doing everything online. And maybe there are things that couldn't necessarily happen if the festival was happening physically. Does anybody want to talk just a bit about the creativity involved in some of these events to get them to air when they happen?
Yeah, I mean, if I can take that, it's interesting as well that while we're exhausted, there is this underpinning of optimism, and as Julie suggests, well, as a fact, we're all a bit wiser as to how to go about it, so probably more confident as well. And I think what's interesting in some of the things that I was talking about, and actually what Julie was talking about, is the business of it bubbling over into actual space too, and so that there's a sense of that we can confidently approach something blended, and certainly in our exhibition, that it actually exists at a window on a street in Temple Bar that we would encourage people to go to. And I suppose that's the same thing with the community choir. There's an element of the visceral to all of this as well. And of course, the Duke of Wellington's harp, or his tree that is now a harp that has laser for strings. There's something very physical about that too. So I don't quite know what I'm saying, but there's something where we're somehow bursting out of the computer screen as well.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Anybody else want to add to that? Because I do have a few more that I want to mention from other strands as well. Some of the workshops and demonstrations and conversations that are being presented in the health and well-being pillar. So this is being done by Nova UCD, Healthy UCD, the College of Business. There are alumni contributors, the College of Social Sciences, Board na Gaeilge, and the UCD University Club as well. Amongst those, with a summer outlook, fingers crossed, of picnic days ahead, the UCD University Club is going to present a picnic demonstration with the wonderful Catherine Fulvio. There'll be Zoom workshop events to help build your resilience with tips from everybody from Olympians to military experts. And that's presented by Nova UCD. Medical doctor, author, TEDx speaker, vitality expert and life strategist, Dr. Mark Rowe will have 2 self-care events at the festival. They're presented by the UCD Michael Smurfit Graduate Business School. Dervla Rourke and Jamie Heaslip will be in conversation. Not telling you anything else, that's all you need to know, and that should be enough for you, frankly. There's going to be working from home exercise tips and demos, because that's going to be with us for quite some time to come as well. Lots of tips on keeping well from Healthy UCD, and UCD alumna Colette Flynn is going to be back with virtual Pilates on campus workshops. On top of all of that, there are new UCD Festival talks next week. They'll be releasing a brand new podcast channel called Festival Talks. They're going to start in the archive of what's available so far and offer festival audiences the chance to listen back to some of the conversations from the UCD Festival at Home 2020, just to potentially whet your appetite for Festival 2021. Already, if anybody wants to stick in a question, this is your last chance to do it. Thank you, Patrick. What's the website to register for events? It is festival.ucd.ie. Simple as that. You'll find all of the details there over the next couple of days, as well as that the festival dates themselves, which we may have skimmed over and not necessarily mentioned enough of, are Thursday, May 27th to Saturday, May 29th. You'll hear tons more about it between here and there. But for now, I think, unless somebody else has got some more questions for us or anybody else wants to add anything, I think that's it, and that's everything we want to tell you about tonight. Sheila, maybe you're going to join us so we can finish up here.
Thank you so much, Rick, and Ellen, Phil and Julie, for that fascinating look into what's coming down the tracks for the second UCD Festival at Home. And as Phil said earlier, it is definitely going to be a virtual showcase event. And most importantly of all, there is definitely going to be something for everybody to enjoy. Before we wrap up this evening, I just want to take this opportunity to mention a couple of other items. As many of you will know, UCD is fully committed to supporting our students, both current and incoming, through this difficult time, whatever their background. And to date, over €300,000 has been raised by generous alumni and friends of UCD for the UCD COVID-19 Emergency Fund. Thank you to those who have already supported this important cause. And if you would like to support our efforts to provide urgent financial and mental health support to those students who need it most, you can visit the link that has been posted to the chat box. So thank you once again to our fantastic speakers this evening, and to you, our viewers, for being with us this evening. We really look forward to welcoming you to our next event, the UCD Festival at Home, in 2 weeks' time. So taking over this usual In Conversation slot will be the Michael Collins conversation with award-winning director Neil Jordan and Dermot Ferreter and Jory from the School of Film. So as Rick mentioned earlier, the full festival programme will be available on the website from next week. We encourage you all to register in the meantime so you don't miss any of the festival updates. And do check out the UCD Festival Talks podcast. It will give you a little taster of what's to come over the next 2 weeks. Please stay safe and well. Good night, and thank you so much for joining us. Thank you.